Indeed. Welcome. Welcome to Open Heart Conversations at United Palace of Spiritual Arts. I am Reverend Dr. Jose Miguel Roman, and I will be one of your hosts today. Here at Open Heart Conversations, we come together as a community once a month, usually the last Sunday of the month at 3 p.m. And what we do is create a forum, create a community, create a space where we can explore and indeed celebrate the enduring spiritual and wisdom and religious traditions that we human beings have created, often to connect with the mystery that is our life. Today, brothers and sisters, we have a particularly special event. Today, we at Open Heart Conversations will explore Judaism, one of the world's oldest enduring religions. Like nearly all the enduring spiritual and religious traditions, it is very difficult to speak of one Judaism, in the sense that there are many rich and complex expressions of this ancient, multifaceted, theological, spiritual, philosophical, and cultural tradition. Nonetheless, I'm going to try to provide a very basic outline of Judaism, and hopefully one that many, maybe even a majority of these expressions, might find helpful, even though some may not find this outline to be perfectly accurate. Scholars tell us that Judaism dates back nearly 4,000 years. It arose in the region that is today called Israel-Palestine. Like nearly any other faith we could explore, Judaism did not enter the world fully formed. It grew and evolved over time, and some would argue that it is growing and evolving today. Many in the tradition trace Jewish heritage to the covenant God is said to have made with Abraham and his lineage, which promised that God would make out of Abraham a sacred people and give them a holy land. The primary figures of Jewish culture include the patriarchs Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and the prophet Moses, who with God's help led his people out of bondage and then received God's law in Mount Sinai. Some of my friends within the Jewish community asked me to emphasize in this brief introduction that Judaism is its tradition grounded in the religious and ethical teachings articulated in the Torah, the first 5 books of the Hebrew Bible. Other sacred texts include the Talmud and Midrash, the rabbinical, legal, and narrative interpretations of the Torah. I think it is important to note that story plays a profound role in the life, spirituality, and self-understanding of the Jewish people. And that most probably will be something we'll explore a little more in depth today. The 4 main movements within Judaism are Orthodoxy, Conservative, Reform, and Reconstructionist. These range from traditional to liberal to religiously progressive in their application of Torah. I will not try to express the basic beliefs that bind this remarkable community together. For that, we have our wonderful and learned teacher, whom my beloved spiritual sister and co-host, Reverend Arda Itez, will now introduce.
Good afternoon, everybody. How are we all doing?
Great.
Good. It's a pleasure to see you all here. Welcome to United Palace. For those of you who are not familiar with us, if this is your first time here, we hope you like our little theater. To those of you who have been here, welcome back. And to members of our congregation who I'm seeing in the audience, thank you for joining us. Today is a really special day. I'm particularly excited for 2 reasons. One, because of our guest. And secondly, you are all invited for the celebration after the Open Heart Conversation, where we will be unscrolling the Torah and whacking willows on stage. I don't know about you, but I've never done that, so it sounds pretty magnificent to me. Secondly, I'm thrilled to have Rabbi Amichai Lau-Lavie here as a guest, and I'll tell you why. When I was a seminary student, we had a panel. I belonged to an organization called One Spirit in Action. And we were the service arm of my seminary, and we had a panel which we called Building Bridges While Breaking Bread. And Rabbi Amichai was a guest on our panel, and he was not yet ordained as a rabbi. And I was so struck by the things he said, not just by his knowledge, but his demeanor. And I'll be very frank, we had a situation in the audience where someone was extraordinarily hostile, and she was very aggressive to someone who was on the panel. And I think instinctively, most of us just kind of went into panic mode. We didn't know what to do. And Amichai handled her in the most compassionate, kindest, and effective way I had ever seen in my life. And from that moment on, I was hooked. Because that was the sign of a true spiritual leader, someone who got it. And sure enough, ever since then, he has not proven me wrong. If anything, he has far superseded what I thought he would be as a rabbi. So it's a real joy to have you here.
Thank you, Arda.
So let me read his formal biography for those of you who are not familiar with the good rabbi. Rabbi Amichai Lau-Lavie is the founding spiritual leader of Shul, New York City, an everybody-friendly, artist-driven, God-optional experimental community for sacred Jewish gatherings based in New York City, and he is the creator of storytelling. An Israeli-born Jewish educator, writer, and performance artist, he received his rabbinical ordination from the Jewish Theological Seminary of America in 2016. Rabbi Amichai is a member of the Global Justice Fellowship of the American Jewish World Service, a founding member of the Jewish Emergent Network, a consultant to the Reboot Network, a member of the URJ faculty team and the Advisory Council of Orem, an LGBTQ-faced organization for refugees, asylum, and migration. He was a Jerusalem Fellow at the Mandel Leadership Institute in Israel from 2008 to 2009, and serves on the advisory committee of Faith House Manhattan. Let me take another breath here. Rabbi Amichai has been hailed as an iconoclastic mystic by Time Out New York, a rock star by the New York Times, a Judaic Pied Piper by the Denver Westward, a maverick spiritual leader by the Times of Israel, and one of the most interesting thinkers in the Jewish world by the Jewish Week. In 2016, the Forward named him one of the 32 most inspiring rabbis in America, and in 2017, he was top 5 on the Forward 50, their annual list of the most influential and accomplished Jews in America. And last, but certainly not least, Rabbi Amichai is the proud Abba of Alice, Ezra, and Charlotte Hallel.
Somewhere here.
Who are somewhere around here.
Probably upstairs.
So, I ask you all to please provide Rabbi Amichai with a warm welcome.
Thank you.
So I have this whole list of questions that I want to ask you, but there's one in particular that I think is very important that I'm thinking the audience that is here, as well as the audience at home, probably wants to know. Everybody friendly, artist driven, God optional, experimental community. Give us the lowdown on that.
Ooh. Okay. Well, you know what it's like when you walk into a place. Maybe it's a restaurant, maybe it's a movie theater, maybe it's a house of worship, and maybe it's somebody's home, and you feel completely welcome, regardless of who you are, what you wear, where you come from, what you believe in, just truly welcomed. So, as we know, that doesn't always happen. And in the world of religions, for many good reasons of survival, many religions, including Judaism, had a lot of walls up. So there's always a welcome mat, but there's a screening. And the screening doesn't always allow everybody in. 21st century Judaism, it is my belief, along with many people who are sitting here or part of our community, is reinventing itself.
Right.
We are evolving. And we're evolving to include people who are Jewish and Jewish, people who were not born Jewish but find themselves in relationship and communication and communion with people for whom Judaism matters. We find ourselves in an era, a blessed era, when it isn't just patriarchy, not just men are in charge, women are in charge, gender is being a fluid opportunity for expressing ourselves in many ways. As somebody who came out of what my mother calls the cupboard in my teens, I sought to have a place where my spirituality and my sexual choice and my cultural and political beliefs are 100% welcomed. So the community that we co-created, based out of a theater company that became this congregation, Shul, is everybody friendly. We don't care what you believe in and who you are. If you want to be with us, come with us. Let's co-create it together. And the God optional is part of that. Because I think in the 21st century, the word God, G-O-D, let alone the concept, for many people is jarring, is off-putting, is beguiling. So by putting God optional in our tagline, we're saying we connect to something bigger. We believe in mystery. Mystery has many names. It is not the old, often perceived masculine Godhead of the Judeo-Christian Western tradition. It's something, but it needs a rebranding. So God optional is a way to invite the many to experience the sacred without being beholden to the liturgy and the mythology of what we've inherited. Art is driven, like the beauty of this place. Art matters. And pop-up, which I'm not sure whether you mentioned, here we are visiting. We don't have a building at this point. We're trying out different zip codes and different venues as an experiment of what does sacred gathering look like, feels like in the 21st century. That's why we're a lab and a shul, which is a German Jewish word for both school and gathering place.
When Arda and I had the opportunity to visit with your community. And Arda, as she said today, actually, in a service, I at one point had this moment of reflection which she shared with me and I shared with your community, where she said, here I am, a Muslim-born woman, getting together with my buddy, who is a Puerto Rican, born and raised Catholic, today Buddhist, to go and celebrate with a Jewish community invited by the rabbi. And the truth is that we were welcomed not merely by you, but by the entire community. We were welcomed with open arms. I mean, at one point you invited us up on stage. We both shared some thoughts. I had people walking over to me speaking Spanish, talking about their times in Puerto Rico, and it was one of the most extraordinary experiences. And I said that to you before. It was a beautiful experience of spirit and community and just plain love that you and the community envisioned and made real.
And I think that's a testament. It's truly a testament to you as a spiritual leader who has been able to create that space.
Absolutely right.
And because your spiritual leader is the one who sets the tone, for the community. And what you've done is so magnificent. We were right at home.
Absolutely right.
And I didn't expect any less. Knowing him as I do, I didn't expect any less. But what a testament to you all as well, who are from the community, that are here with us today. Thank you for welcoming both Reverend Jose and I so beautifully. We did feel right at home, so thank you.
But, now I will say the but. I will admit to you that when I left and I was thinking of this moment with you, and given all that I'd read and had experienced, I asked myself, can someone be Jewish and be God optional? How can that be reconciled? Is not the great gift of the Jewish community to the world the very idea of the one absolute eternal God?
Ooh, wow, we haven't even warmed up. Yes, and
Yes.
I think we're dealing with semantics. So so in Judaism and in Hebrew, there are many names for the divine. The most known colloquial, the nickname, if you'd like, is Hashem, which means the name. The name of the divine is the name. There are many, many others. The one that I connect to, that I think is at the core of the human experience, not just the Jewish experience, is the name that means presence, being. It's a turning around of Yahweh, of the four-letter name. And that name is Havaya. Havaya means existence. It's non-gendered. It is an eternal expression of being. This name sort of shows up the first time in the biblical story of Moses encountering the burning bush and being told to not just think of his own needs, but what it means to be in the service of his people, of humanity, fight for freedom. And he says to the voice inside that burning bush, who shall I say is calling? Like, these people have been slaves for hundreds of years and have been deprived of their indigenous ethnic landscape and religiosity. They've been immersed in Egyptian culture. Who shall I say is calling? And the bizarre answer is, Eheye asher eheye. I am that I am. I will be that I will be, becoming. I am eternal presence. So if your Buddhist meets your also Muslim and my Jewish and our Christian, where we all meet is that the divine mystery is about being completely present. Here and now. Not stuck in the anxieties of our past and the worries of our future. Here and now. So that notion of divinity, of being connected to the mystery of life, to being here and now, breathing, grateful, conscious, connected to something that defies language, that transcends words, that we all know when we see it, when we feel it, that's a human expression. Now, my experience as somebody who grew up Orthodox, and many people who were raised Jewish and other religions, is that organized religions, for many of us, instead of getting us closer into the experience of transcendence in presence, bored us to tears with endless pages and words and hymns and prayers to a God with a big white beard on a big throne in the sky that is judging us, not loving us, with faith that is conditional, not love that is unconditional, with religious dogma that is responsible for the fact that many houses of faith are empty or dwindling. So the question is, one of my questions is, well, what do we do about that? So God optional is, it's not a marketing ploy exactly, but it's a way to say, whoever you are, whatever you do or don't believe in, strip away the layers, let's meet where we meet. And the option is, you call it what you want it. And if you are an agnostic, an atheist, a questioner, and we've got many amongst us, that's fine. You're a human being, you're breathing. You're alive. That's holy in some way. Let's explore that. And we're a new community. We're still figuring out. I'm seeing a lot of nods, and even when the auditorium is not that lit, I'm seeing some furrowed brows. This is a conversation we don't have that often at Lab Shul. And we've had, but not as often. How do we feel about this God optional thing? I'm evolving with it. I think we're evolving with it. But at the end of the day, it's an invitation for being truly present. The rest is jargon.
Is it also an invitation to even enter into what is God?
Yeah, I think so. I think that doesn't necessarily happen in the big gatherings when we come to experience the sacred. It happens more in smaller study salons, in conversations when we can be vulnerable, both with our doubts and with our aspirations. I mean, this is sort of a conversation off of this one. But here we are in a movie theater that became a church that is now being reinvented as a house of spirit and art. And, you know, those of us sitting in the seats, what happens when we go to the movies and we are spectators of a story, of a myth, and we weep or we laugh and we connect and our soul goes on a journey through the hero's journey of the film? We're involved in a sacred act of storytelling.
Right.
Same with the theater, same with opera, same with a great rock concert. And when we come to the house of worship and we sit in the same pews, what are our expectations? What are the assumptions? What could be happening that is as heart-opening and inviting into the human experience of growth as is what happens in the movies? The experiment that we're trying to create with Lab Shul, and I know you are, and so many of our colleagues are, is to reinvent and reclaim the sense of communal, public privacy.
Well put.
Yeah.
In other words, if we're sitting in the, so you were with us on Yom Kippur, right? The big one. And you were there, as I was telling Arda, you were there for the all-faith ritual in the afternoon and the closing prayer, which means we've all been cooking in this juice for, well, we're fasting, but we've all been doing this for about 20 hours. We've been fasting, we've been singing, we've been meditating, we've been praying, and we can talk about what that verb means a lot. So by the time in the afternoon, I'll speak for myself, my heart is wide open. And I don't want to waste any more time. There are things that I want for my life, for my improvement, for my community, from the world. Do I pray? Do I say, please, God, optional? No. I connect to the universal will in some way that is beyond words. Words are not always helpful here, but it's very, very profound. And then I weep, because I'm a weeper. People here know that. I cry at commercials, so how much more so on Yom Kippur? And then I watch other people cry. And people tell me afterwards that the permission to cry is to be very private with my own needs and desires and hopes and frustrations, but we're doing it publicly. So this public-private space, I think that is the wisdom of the religious arena, and that is what a lot of us are seeking, to reclaim that space in many ways. That was a very long answer to a very complicated question.
No, but it was a thorough
May I use
answer.
this?
I think I might have drank from that already.
Okay, well, we can share water.
You're welcome to it.
I mean, I kind of feel I want to, come on.
I have more germs than she does. So.
That's, well, wow, okay, this is the most, I might take this home.
There's something very profound, I think. The definition of spiritual or religious community, I think, has changed considerably, and people's needs and wants for community have changed considerably. What we're looking for is really a sacred space, a safe space. to be held, to be seen, to be heard, to be loved, and to worship together. Whatever that worship looks like or means to each individual. And again, I think it's something you've captured brilliantly. And it's not, you can be Catholic or Christian or Muslim or a pagan or whatever your spiritual beliefs are, you can go to Lab Shul and feel at home.
Absolutely.
That's a true spiritual community. And I feel like it's a true embodiment of what Judaism, or what any religion for that matter, is, or strives to be, or began as.
Or can become.
Or can become.
I think, we've talked a lot about that, and folks at Lab Shul have heard me say this. We come from tribal. We come from very specific ethnic boundaries. There were ghetto walls. There are racial limitations. There are gender issues. We come from societies that were very walled. And the Enlightenment, the 20th century industrialization, the feminist movement, the civic rights movement in this country. We're living in a moment, in a fragile moment, and we're not going to get into politics, where in this country and in the world right now, that openness is being challenged by who's first and fences up and all that. And that comes from a place of fear, but also comes from a place of protecting what we know. What we know worked. But some of us are leaning into what we don't know how it's going to work.
Right.
But we're excited by the fact that, again, it's an experiment. But for me, that on Yom Kippur, the holiest day of the Jewish year, when it's really about embracing our narratives, we are sitting with Muslim leaders and Christian leaders and Buddhist and Zen and Hindu and saying together, let's find out what's more in common than what is separating.
And I think
that's new. I think let's admit that maybe it happened in Alexandria a little bit, and it happened in Spain at the Golden Age, and there were moments in human history where we all kumbaya'd, but that's pretty rare. We're still babies when it comes to this ecumenical, not just respect. I will go to your church, you'll go to my mosque, we'll say hello, we will vow to not butcher each other every 5 minutes. Very nice. We're saying more than that. We're saying what happens when we are we? How do we not lose my Hebraic and your Christian and this specific voice? How do we not lose our individuality and still create a new sense of sacred collective?
Right.
That's the big experiment that I know at One Spirit and here, and so many of our colleagues are exploring. It's still a huge threat to many, many, many people in my family and community, surely in yours, whoever's here and watching. Clearly you're already one step into this narrative, but we don't know how it's going to play out.
What I find fascinating is that you're struggling with that tension the same way we're struggling with that tension. Folks can come to Lab Shul. Anyone can come to Lab Shul. Yes, you can be a Puerto Rican Buddhist and go to Lab Shul and experience spirit. You're still walking into a community that is doing it within a Jewish context, right? What does that mean to you? What does it mean that space, not that the space is open, but that the space is also focused as a Jewish space? What makes that space Jewish?
So I feel extremely lucky and privileged to be one of the heirs of a 4 or 5 or 3 or 10,000-year-old technology for making sense of life. I grew up Jewish. I didn't choose it. I grew up very Orthodox, which I can explain. I know you asked me about that, like what that means in the geopolitics of denominations. And I decided to leave that particular Jewish context to become what I like to call flexidox or polydox. Orthodox means one way, right? Like there's this lane here in the middle, this aisle, and you just walk down the aisle. The King's Road, you don't deviate left or right, follow the law, this is it. Orthodoxa. Flexidox or polydox means, I'm going to take a little excursion and exit off the highway, and then what if I walk this way and hop over the seats or like walk. Time will tell where Shul is going, where American Jewry is going, where global Jewry is evolving to, where America is evolving into. For this moment, what I would say is that as somebody who is an heir of Judaism, I feel responsible in this relay race to transmit the core tenets, the vocabulary, the storytelling, the mythology, the practice. But the relay race is not autopilot. I'm not just taking what I inherited from my father and mother and prior generations and teachers and handing it over as is. In the process of this relay race, the baton, the content, changes as well. 21st century Judaism is not 18th century Judaism, nor is it 8th century Judaism, nor is it 20th century Judaism. Question is, how much can you change, how much can you keep? Baby bathwater.
Right.
So first of all, for Shul to be a community of spiritual seekers, of conscious beings, powered by Judaism,
Right.
yearning to have Jewish context, but not necessarily Jewish, that's at the forefront. That's the foundation of what we do. The responsibility to...
And how do you do that?
So it's sort of like a dual loyalty. It's responsibility to the past, but it's responsibility to the present. So 60+% of American Jews at this moment choose to love and partner with people who are not necessarily Jewish, weren't born Jewish, not becoming Jewish, but like Jewish, show up for Jewish, want to have a rite of passage for their children, Jewish style, want to have a Jewish wedding, show up to some of the Jewish rituals, love the Sabbath. So technically, according to Jewish law, what we're seeing in the last century, certainly a few decades, is that the whole who's a Jew thing is changing in radical ways. By the way, not unlike what's happening with Lutherans and what's happening in certain Hindu and Muslim situations. Like we're seeing a lot of blurring. Question is, what's the core? How do you keep the core the core? So for us, for me, it is negotiating what is primary and what is secondary. What has to be there and what is negotiable.
What's primary?
So I would say for me, and again for Shul, the primary is a 3-ingredient recipe that has to be part of what we do to qualify as a valid member in the Jewish relay race. And this is a quotation of a recipe, a 3-element recipe that goes back some 2,000 years, when rabbis like myself and others were wondering what to do. And so rabbis in the early part of the Mishnah, we're talking around 1900 years ago, in probably what is now Israel, came up with this grid. Judaism consists of wisdom, Torah, being connected to our wisdom and to the tradition of wisdom, number one. Number two, spiritual practice, avodah, translated also as yoga, not as in just like the embodied thing, but like the work, doing the work, spiritual work, and chesed, which is kindness and taking care of others. So this Talmudic grid basically says the Jewish recipe for how to live a life of integrity as an individual and as a community is to dedicate authentic time for wisdom, And specifically, Torah, the Hebrew word Torah means the teaching. It is the 5 books of Moses. It is the Bible, but it is wisdom. Tap into sacred wisdom. Learn. Go to a book club. Open the Bible or the Gita or the Quran. Tap into wisdom. Number 1. And every Jewish ritual, every one we do, has these elements as part of it. What can we learn? How can we learn from our tradition, from each other, and become wiser beings?
Are those the only basic tenets, those 3 that you're discussing?
No.
Or?
So there is a chapter in a book called The Ethics of the Ancestors, in which rabbis who lived between the 1st and the 3rd century CE come up with their list of, here's my top 3. And this one, Torah, Avodah, Gmilut Chasadim, wisdom, spiritual practice, and kindness, triumphed, like the survival of the fittest. It is found on endless synagogue letterhead, logos, and carved in marble in many a lobby. I think many of us in this day and age resonate with this particular 3-step recipe because it really answers who we are. Right? The end of the day is kindness, is taking care of each other, both as humans, as civic, responsible members of society, as people who take care of each other's illness, and our elderly parents, of our friends who just need a hug. Right? That is not it's a voluntary act, but in this recipe, that's part of your diet. That's not an option. That's what you do. And you pursue wisdom, and you cultivate spiritual practice. For so many people today, I'll speak for Jews, prayer, talking to God, opening a prayer book, doing spiritual practice when you wake up in the morning, when you go to sleep, when you drink a cup of water, when you go to the house of the deceased, we don't know how to do that. We lost the vocabulary. I think many of us are seeking that second part, the spiritual practice in many ways, retrieving and reclaiming some of the tenets and the tools of our tradition and bringing it with other traditions. So I would say those 3 are at the core.
Those are the 3 ingredients of a good Buddhist.
The Sangha.
No, those are
the Dharma.
And a good Buddhist would say you follow the Eightfold Path. And the Eightfold Path is broken up into 3 content: wisdom, loving kindness, and practice.
Why do you think there's so many Jubus? Right? No, we meet like all the rivers go to the sea. Amen. And we are at this precious historical moment made only last and deepen, where we get to do this. And not just us who went to the seminaries and our thing. People are doing this. We are naturally, organically on the bending arc of justice and reconciliation, that religion isn't a weapon,
right,
but is a vessel of connection to the most sacred. And so, look, there's so many ways to answer the Jewish, like, what are the tenets? There are 613 laws, and there are 5 books, and there are, on and on. I'm not very good with numbers, but there's a lot of, like, number grids of how do you, slice and splice the Jewish thing. That 3-step recipe is simple. And it's not coincidental that is analogous. And then you go to the, what is known in Christianity as the Golden Rule, which comes from Leviticus, from the Torah, and has been hallowed by the rabbis in the Talmudic era, that says, love other as you love yourself. That's it. The rest is gravy. The rest is details. The rest is the small print. Now, that sounds so fluffy. So the question is, okay, how do I walk that talk? How do I love myself? How do I love you? How do I love my really challenging neighbor? How do I love the difficult people in the news and in my building, right? Walking that talk, that's religious life. And I think for Judaism, as for all of us, that's really the challenge.
You mentioned all of these These sacred scriptures, what are the sacred scriptures outside of the Torah?
Okay, so that's a fun question. It's important to say, and this is a lot of what I'm hoping to write in a more articulated way, hopefully starting this year, that for Judaism, Torah, the body of wisdom, is comprised of two main aspects. One is the written text, and I'll explain more about what that is in a moment. But equally important is the spoken text. What we're doing right now.
Oral tradition.
The oral tradition. You've got the book, you've got the conversation. So in the books or in the writing, in the written department, we have first and foremost the Torah, which is the 5 books of Moses. It is a Torah scroll. The scroll was the innovative technology of the 5th century BCE, 2,500 years ago, and Jews still stick to that technology. We read our sacred scriptures weekly in synagogue from that scroll, and in just a little bit we're going to do what we do only once a year on this day, which marks the end of the annual cycle of reading the 5 books and the beginning of the new one, by taking the Torah scroll, the one that our community received as a gift, and we open it up completely, which is very rare. It's been done more now, and it's just exquisite. And it's holy. The Torah scroll is a sacred object. It is the closest we have to manifesting the divine, and dare I say, the Torah is always feminine. So our most sacred object, kept behind curtains and doors, is always alluded to as a she. So ask me later about the Jewish Semitic history of the goddess and the feminine and how we got into this patriarchal mess, but in a bit. So yes, we have the Torah is the 5 books. Then you've got the Tanakh, the Bible,
right,
or the Hebrew Bible, the Old Testament, which is comprised of the prophets and the writings. Anything starting with Genesis, going into the Psalms, and Job, Jonah, and Isaiah, and Ruth, and Esther, the Bible. Holy, holy, holy. There's a project that began in Israel a few years ago called 929. 929 are the 929 are the numbers of the chapters in the Hebrew Bible. And my older brother, who's a rabbi in Israel, Orthodox, and extremely compassionate, liberal, and innovative, started a project called 929, where people are invited to read a chapter of Bible every day. And it takes about 3.5 years to go through that cycle. So there's Torah, and then the Bible. You know those Russian dolls?
Yes. Doll inside a doll.
Doll inside a doll. So that's basically the Jewish canon. So you got the Torah, and then you got the Bible, and then you've got the Mishnah. So by the 2nd century of the Common Era, 1800 years ago, it was pretty clear the temple was destroyed, sacrifices were finished, there was a paradigm shift. And the rabbis and the people didn't know how to Jew. Like, how do you Jew without a temple? How do you practice without an altar and giving sacrifices to God? Now, this is something that happened throughout the Near East. All religions went through the evolution from sacrificing first children,
right,
to then animals, to then singing, offering up our sweat and our time and our heart and our voice. So for Judaism, that 100 years of shift from temple and sacrifice to synagogue and prayer was a baffling period and a creative, innovative oasis where prayers and morning, afternoon, evening began to evolve. And that included attempts to make sense of the legal system. So the Talmud, which means the teaching, develops as the next Russian doll, as the margin comment that is relating to the Bible. And first was the Mishnah, and then the Gemara, and that's a book that took 500 years to create, until it was finished in what is now Iraq, when Jews were living in Babylon around the 6th century, 6th to 7th century CE. So that's the next volume of tomes the Talmud, which is studied in many different ways. It's got laws, it's got legend, it's got everything. Then you've got, like, the library continues, but every single shelf comments on the shelves before.
Right.
So you've got Kabbalah that shows up. Kabbalah is mysticism, right? People are saying, the law is great, but talk to me about the supernatural. Where's the soul? If God does exist, then who is she, they, it? So Kabbalah develops, especially in medieval Europe, in the 11th to the 14th century. Meanwhile, in what were the Muslim lands, where Jews enjoyed a great deal of respect, prosperity, and open dialogue, much of the Jewish poetry, literature, philosophy evolves all the way into modernity. So
What is Midrash?
So, great. So Midrash will be a great bridge from the written text to the spoken text. And people who know me here know that it's going to be hard for me to curb my enthusiasm and keep this pithy. So the word Midrash is a Hebrew word that means several things. The most important one to this conversation is that it is commentary.
Right.
But more than commentary, it is about encounter, right? If I extend my hand to yours, I am doresh bishlomcha. I am creating the verb of midrash. I'm extending my reality to your reality, your reality to my reality. It's an encounter.
Right.
So the word midrash means encounter, conversation, commentary. And it is the commentary on what came before. So, for instance, there is the story about Abraham, father of monotheism, who one day wakes up and has a voice in his head that says, Abraham, go, right? How did that happen, right? How does a person recognize a voice in one's head and doesn't, immediately institutionalize oneself, but realizes that actually it's a sacred calling, and maybe he did, we don't know. Like, who's Abraham? How did that happen? So Midrash was the fruit of some sages and storytellers and artists who sat around and said, Abraham, let's tell a story about him. Oh, he had a dad. And the dad had this like bodega full of idols, because we're in Mesopotamia in the whatever Bronze Age.
And I've been in those bodegas.
So, right, there's lots of gods and goddesses.
There's one on Broadway.
And, right, exactly. We've seen them everywhere. And like Abraham was like, I don't get it. All these gods, and they're made of wood, whatever. There's a whole story there that somebody wrote, that if you ask a lot of people who went to Hebrew school, they're convinced that that story is in the Bible. That Abraham's dad had an idol shop, and one day Abraham said, this is BS. Like, how can you, like, the biggest God is that? And he broke them all, and like, anyway. So, it's legend. It's myth. But what's interesting about Midrash, and this is where it connects with the oral tradition, is that the only way for Torah, for the Jewish wisdom to exist, is that if it's a split screen, complementary, ongoing narrative.
Right.
So Genesis is right there, and it's a canon, and it's been written, and I'm not messing with it. But on the margins of the text comes Midrash, comes commentary that talks back to the texts, that translates the texts, that interprets the text, that challenges the text. And that too is Midrash. And that keeps happening. So I'll just give you one more example, okay? Very close to home, if I may. When I was in my teens, religious boy, interested in the religious conversation, I realized that I was gay.
Right.
This is in the 80s, early mid-80s. And as a religious, thank goodness things are so much different now, but there was no language for this. Either I am an abomination, and I'm a sin, and this is the love that cannot be spoken. I got no one to talk to about this, and God and Jewish law and tradition have no room for me. Or I shove who I am in the cupboard and play nice with Jewish law and Jewish religion. It was an either-or game. And I kept thinking, you know what? this is not an either-or game. And I kept going back to the Jewish law books and to the Jewish law and to the verse in the book of Leviticus in the Bible that says, if a man is with another man, it's an abomination, execution. And said to myself, I'm not the only one reading this and saying, this doesn't feel right. I'm going to argue with this text. And then I found a 18th century rabbi and a 19th century scholar and a 11th century thinker and an 8th, who are all like grappling with this. And I realized that the Jewish tradition, the reason we're still around is because we got the text and we revere it, but we keep arguing with it. And if it's because of our human rights that have changed, if because our reality has evolved, if one of the 5 books is all about sacrifices, we don't offer sacrifices anymore as we did. So we're only going to read it as metaphor, right? So it's about finding myth, metaphor, talking back to the text. So the Jewish library is vast, but it's only as vast as the body of spoken language that talks back to it. So the literacy that is required to make sense of Judaism is knowing the text, but then learning how to talk back to the text.
And then and Arda has a million questions she wants to ask, so this will be one of my last. But that's my understanding of Judaism, and I hope that doesn't sound arrogant or pompous, but my understanding of Judaism is taking that ongoing multi-generational dialogue seriously and entering into it passionately. This idea that generation after generation after generation, within the context of this magnificent library, has been having this dialogue about what it is to be a human person.
Yes.
And to take that seriously and enter into it passionately has a deep element that describes to me what it is to be Jewish.
I agree. That's why, with all my reservations about some of the limited, fear-based, traditional tropes of Judaism that don't allow us to rise to our potential, at the core of it, that's why I dedicated my life both to the rabbinate and to my community and to the artistry of evolving Judaism, to not being stuck in where we were, behind ghetto walls and fear of assimilation. And no, let's love what we got, let's own it, let's refine it, and let's roll with it.
Right.
I'll tell you a very short story. It's from a synagogue that is a few blocks from where we're sitting. And I just shared this story in my sukkah, my holy hut of the season that we're about to wrap up tomorrow. So, I don't know who's watching. Hopefully I won't get into trouble for this, but here goes. There is a synagogue not far from here, built in the 1930s by a group of German Jews, some of them my relatives, who fled Germany because of Hitler and rebuilt their congregation and their community here in Washington Heights. The urban myth about this story, I'm not saying this is true, this is a story. The story is that once a year on this holiday, as we will be doing in just a bit, in every synagogue, the men, in our synagogues, men and women, go in a circle around the main stage, the bima, holding the greens of the holiday that we will have here, and chant Hoshana, Hallelujah, 7 times in a circle. This particular congregation here in Washington Heights, according to the story, at a very specific spot, the northwest corner of the bima, everybody bows really deeply. And there was this congregant who was also an anthropologist at some point, who was very curious, because he's been to many synagogues. Nobody does that northwest bow. What's that about? So he started researching, and he looked at the blueprints of the synagogue that was built in the 30s. On the basis of the blueprint of the synagogue that was in Frankfurt, Germany since the 1700s. And what he discovered was that in the 1700s, when that synagogue was built, there was a heating pipe or something that went down by the northwest corner. There was no way around it. So every time they went around, they had to bow down so that they won't bonk their foreheads. And like German Jews, of which I'm 50%, we go by the book. We don't like deviation too much. It's very OCD. They're like, that's what they did in Germany. That's what we're going to do in New York City. We're going to bow down, even though there's no pipe, right? So this is where, like, you're thinking, really, people, stop. On the other hand, that's tradition for you.
Right.
And it's absolutely beautiful, and it's specific, germane to this community. And then at some point you say, what are the heating pipes that are not serving us anymore, that are misogynistic, that are not loving, that are limiting our humanity? What of those heating pipes can we please remove?
Right. Or build heating pipes in the right place.
Yes. It's about negotiation of past and present. If we're too tethered to what was, we wear black and we're afraid of sex and we're afraid of women and we're like, well, that's what it is. And if we're saying, okay, let's evolve. Let us evolve. That's the game. That's the beauty of the
I
evolution.
think what's so beautiful about that evolution is when you start to incorporate some of the practices from other faiths and rituals and such. It's just, the way I see it, I deplore the word tolerate, because tolerate is not something that we should aspire to. You know, maybe it's a starting place, but for me, there's such richness in the different religions and cultures, and oh my God, what if, how boring it would be, quite frankly, if we all looked the same, sounded the same, celebrated the same way, ate the same food. Like, this is the beauty, you know, of life, in my opinion. And to be able to do that in a congregation, in a spiritual community, whatever that spiritual community is, I think is magnificent. And my hope, sincerely my hope, and we talked about this today during our service, is that this evolution of consciousness that takes it to this place where we can still be individual, you know, and we can honor our traditions and customs while still enjoying and celebrating those of others.
That's the challenge, I think, for this moment in time.
Yeah, but
particularly this moment in time.
But I'm a big believer that you have to break down before you break through. And I think there's an inevitable, there's always, it's always darkest before dawn. And great transformation always and only comes after chaos. So I'm hopeful. I'm truly hopeful. And being here with you and with you and with all of you gives me even more hope. Because there are so many people like us that don't even know we're here, that don't even know we exist.
Yeah.
But we can cultivate that love and that relationship and that community. And it can grow, and it will grow, and I'm confident of that.
Amen.
I think one of the, and again, it goes back to the experience I had at Lab Shul. I really do think that there has to be some deed, and please, I want you to speak to this, because I think you create these kinds of spaces where you can have a real encounter with the other, whatever the other is. I felt like you had no others. Everybody was brother, sister, everybody was neighbor. It is when you have that encounter that you're transformed. I never imagined I would share this story, and I'm going to say it very quickly. And I do it in honor of my mom, who passed away. When I was about 8 years old, I came home from school, and I was in a really bad space. And my mom noticed, and she called me over and asked me what happened. And I said to her that my friend had told me that my best friend in school was going to go to hell, which was very important to me as a Catholic. And I said, why? My mom asked me why, and I said, because she said that he and his people killed Jesus. And my mother went through this whole spiel that ended with her saying, Papito, those who seek God sincerely are adored by God. And so there's nothing, you know. And I actually quoted my mother in my dissertation, my doctoral dissertation, but she did more than that. And I literally remember this happened on a Wednesday. Arda knows this story. On Friday, when I woke up to go to school, I got dressed, and as I'm about to leave, my mom says, no, you're not going to school, you're going to work with me. My mother managed theaters for 40 years in New York City. And so I'm like, this is a gift. I don't have to go to school. I'm going to go to the theater and watch movies. This is awesome. I mean, So of course we go to the theater and I run around, and I get popcorn, all the rest. And it was now around 12:30 when the theater's going to open. And she says, "Papi, come with me." And we go all the way. We go walk out of the theater and we walk up the stairs. And then she opens the door that I had never walked through. And there's another staircase. And I go up those stairs. And she knocks on the door, and this man opens the door. Now, to me, he was a giant. He was wearing a white shirt and black pants. And my mom says, "Papi, this is Mr. Berman. Mr. Berman is our cameraman. He's the man who makes the magic happen." And I said, "Wow." And I see the cameras, and I walk in. And she says, "Papi, Mr. Berman is just like your friend David. He's Jewish. I want you to tell him the story that was shared with you in school and have a conversation with him." She walked out of the room, and I spent literally 12 hours with Mr. Berman having lunch and having dinner and chatting and watching the movie. And to this day, I realize that what that woman did was rip apart any possibility of my being an anti-Semite. She created an encounter that would transform my soul, that would mold my soul. And I feel that you invite people into that encounter. That's part of what you're trying to do. That's why I felt that I was so overwhelmed when I sat with you in your beautiful community. Is that what you're trying to do?
First of all, blessed be your mother.
Yeah, she was.
And her memory and her wisdom. It reminds me of the verse from Proverbs that says, "Shma bini Torat imecha ve'al titosh musar avicha." Listen, my son, to the Torah, the wisdom of your mother, and do not abandon the ethics of your father. But it's the mother first, and it's the wisdom of the mother first, then comes the law of the father. First, the wisdom of the mother. So your mother obviously embodies that. And I hope she was so thrilled to see that her wise taking you away from school led to you becoming a spiritual leader that's doing that work in the world. Yes. And I don't know how we are with time. I'm sure we're not that. I mean, we're going to continue this many nights.
We have about another 10, 15 minutes.
Right, and then we want to open up right, before you all get to come on stage and unscroll the Torah and whack willows, and I'll tell you more about that, because it doesn't happen that often, and it's one of the craziest ancient pagan things that Jews inherited and do without quite knowing what we're doing, so this will be fun. But I want to say a word about, since you brought in your mother, I want to talk about the mother. First of all, I will say, I don't think my mother is watching. She was watching from Jerusalem the live streaming of the All Faith ritual and the closing. She was. She watches it every year. She gives me very specific pointers. And as a religious, Orthodox, very pious, and very sincere woman, took her quite a few years to lean into our All Faith ritual without freaking out. Remember, one of the first years, so she finishes Yom Kippur in Israel, they're 7 hours ahead, they go home, they break the fast, they turn on the computer to watch my brother, and the first thing they saw that year was an imam, like leading the call to prayer. Like, they had no context, and boy did I get an earful. But over the years, she understands, and she loved this last one on many levels. So part of the exciting, daunting, historical evolution of this moment in time, I will speak for Judaism not for all of Judaism. For the Judaism, I know, but I think we can all connect about this, and it has to do with where we are politically this week, is that for generations, one would say for over 2,000 years, the defining narrative and trope of divinity in Judaism was masculine. Right. The Godhead became masculine, wasn't originally masculine. Mm-hmm. Certainly if you open Genesis, and if you open other biblical variations, the divine is at best a masculine, feminine, neither both. El Shaddai in Genesis is masculine, feminine. The mother, the feminine divine, Shekhinah, as she would become later known, unquestionably the original rock, the rock bottom of the Semitic theology, including the Judaic. At some point, patriarchy took over. Patriarchy as Godhead, patriarchy as who are the clergy, patriarchy as who are the priests. Mm-hmm. It became a male-centrist society and religion. And we know when that happened. Mm-hmm. Historically and as far as mythic and literature. Then came modernity. And in 1920, women in this country voted for the first time. I just learned that in Switzerland, it happened in 1971. God, and there are still places in the world where, and we're all fighting still for equality. And that's just the notion of the feminists. We're still talking about getting beyond the racial bias and beyond the gender and the sexual identity. Now, that is a new trope for humanity. And so many of us are retrieving a sense of the divine as non-masculine and non-binary, and not the awe of the Lord up in heaven, but the love of the divine here and now, the unconditional love of a mother, as opposed to the, and I'm as a father with my kids running around here, like the cliche of the stern father. We are retrieving a sense of the divine that is not that up in heaven. It's here on earth. It is the mother, it is the father, it is the sister and the brother. It is a combination of the ancient pagan, indigenous, love, joyful. I just moved not far from here, and on Sunday morning, there, just the gospel in the streets. Like, I want to go to every single church. It's going to be like Sundays in rotation, because there's joy, and it's in the body. So something happened in the 20th century where the beginning of the 21st century, which is not just about the ecumenical, that's a manifestation of it. It is about the feminine. It is about the voice of the mother and the sister and the leader that isn't just masculine. It is about the sexual and the embodied. It is about the sensual. It is about the heart. Here we are at open heart and not just the mind. It's about the text and what's beyond the text. And I don't know where we're going and what history will prove itself with this century and beyond. But for my own personal, spiritual, intellectual practice, and I've said this before, and folks have heard me, at the end of the day, when I close my eyes and communicate with mystery, it's non-gendered, but she's way more the mama. And that's where my heart opens. When I'm on my knees in tears, with real need and real pain, there is an ancient voice of the greater than mother that I connect to. Mm-hmm. And it took me years to understand that I'm not some freak, that this is in the deepest root of the Judaic tradition I inherited, and there has been a deliberate cover-up, a deliberate denial of the feminine in our tradition. Deliberate, unquestionable, repressing and denying, and what we're experiencing now with the demand to believe women when we and our sisters say such and such happened, vis-a-vis saying, oh, no, you're just making that. No. the repression, the cultural religious repression goes back. And Christianity adopted it, Islam adopted it, Judaism adopted and cultivated it. But at the root of who we are is a Semitic, sensual, wild, gorgeous religiosity that a lot of our work is, we're bringing it back. And it's messy.
Right.
Because it's not like, oh, we're just going to take off that wallpaper and there she is, because it keeps evolving. Mm-hmm. And this ritual we'll be doing today, that's that. I see some of my team here that is laboriously translating our liturgy from we praise you, Adonai, in masculine to, this is poetry. We want poetry to open our hearts and bring her, him, it, they into a dance that opens up our souls.
Right.
And on the one hand, we are reclaiming the past, and on the other hand, we're completely reinventing it. And I know I'm not the only one.
No, that's spiritual artistry. That's what Reverend Heather Shea is trying to bring here to the United Palace.
And I think this era, this epoch, deserves this, and like we need to do this all the time.
Absolutely. Because
so many people are like, oh God, ugh. And you're like, yeah, there's like a bad branding issue here, a lot of baggage. But underneath that, I'll tell you one quick little story. My son is not here today. And some of you have heard me say this from Lab Shul. But my son, Ezra, who's 10, loves Greek mythology, right? He gets it. He gets the power of mythology, of larger-than-life superheroes and superheroines. And about a year ago, he was in a lousy mood for whatever reason. And I asked him, all right, what do you need right now, right? You're stressed. What will be helpful? Without blinking, he raises his hands and he says, Athena, mother of wisdom, I need your counsel now.
We need to introduce this child to Gene Houston.
oh my God.
Oh, yes, you do. I want Gene to meet him big time. So I was like, wow, Ezra, that was amazing. How do you feel now? And he looked at me and he said, better. And I said, I love you. I love that you called on the mother. I love that you called on Athena. Let's talk about the fact that you're a rabbi's son. And like, no, but in a good way. Like we're part of this renaissance of like bringing her back. And we've had many conversations about it. And
you know that Gene is chairman of the board.
yes, I know. Her, like reading her was very instrumental for me.
I just spent last weekend with her.
Oh wow!
And Peggy Nash, and he must meet Gene.
Well, let me start, and then I'll bring him. I want to meet her first. We'll do it together. Look, Gene's work, Robert Bly's work,
Right.
Joseph Campbell's work. There's a book that I discovered. I worked in when I left Israel in '92. Just when I finished the army, I was already out. I wasn't sure about religion. I was like confused about Israel and where Israel was going. I ended up as a counselor in a summer camp in Pennsylvania, a Jewish summer camp in Pennsylvania. I was 22, 23 years old. And there was a dusty library. Nobody walks into the library at a summer camp. Everybody was out by the lake. I hung out in the library. There was a little book called Hebrew Myths that I just ordered like my 100th copy of the other day. Hebrew Myths is a book written by Robert Graves and Raphael Patai, two of the great mythologists of the 20th century. And what they do in this book, and I remember sitting there, my eyes like blown, like there's no words to describe it. I thought I was going to have a heart attack. Basically, one page is Genesis, basically like retelling some of the narratives of Genesis, and the other side is, well, here are the Mesopotamian origins. Here's how this relates to the Hittite, blah, blah, blah. This is how this speaks to the... And suddenly I woke up and I said, oh, that Bible thing that I grew up with and I had so much trouble with, not just because of homosexuality, because of the hatred of the other, because of the misogyny, because of so many other things, that, oh, we're part of a cultural chain. Right? And it evolved, which means it keeps evolving. And it's mythology.
Right.
It's myth in the sense of sacred story. It isn't history. Don't argue to me right now like God wrote the Bible, Moses said literally it has to be this way. No, These are invitations
Correct.
for metaphor.
Right.
And that little book changed my life,
And
for sure.
when you understand that what's yours becomes mine, what's mine becomes yours. My culture is your culture. Your culture. We are all one people in a sense.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, we meet in the Venn diagram
Absolutely
of
correct.
what's sacred.
Absolutely correct.
Without fear. I think that's the thing, right? So many of our respective friends and allies are just afraid that once you bring a little too much Buddhist into the shul, then there goes Jewish.
Yeah.
And once we love too many people who are not Jewish, then there goes Jewish. And the answer to that is quit the fear. It's legitimate. Let's just work on meeting in the middle.
Right.
With love and security. I'm confident in my Judaism. I love it. It matters to me. I'm working on it. And therefore, mixing and blending only adds to it. So it's about moving from fear towards trust.
Magnificent. So we have, do you want to explain to the audience what
What's
we're
happening
going to
next?
be doing? Yes,
Yes.
what we're going to be doing. And
Yes.
you know what we didn't do is we didn't introduce the magnificent musicians.
We're coming back on stage now, so
Where
that's
are they?
perfect.
Where are they?
So Naomi Les, who just joined us on stage, who is one of my partners in co-creating and founding Lab Shul, and is an amazing liturgist and ritualist and educator and artist. And my daughter's not taking care of her daughter, so talk about all things together. And Eliana Kistner, who just joined us this year as a educator and as a cantor and a liturgical artist. Marcelo has been doing percussion with us for several years. And Daphna, it's been a while since we played together, but is part of the ecosystem of sacred music, both Jewish and beyond in New York City. So the musicians on stage, part of our team is here as well. Today on the Jewish calendar is a peculiar day. It's known as Hoshana Raba, which means the big Hoshana. This is like the big help us. And it is the last day of the holiday of Sukkot, of the Holy Booths. It really is, we're like wrapping up the high holy days today. And what people do on this day is, today and tonight and tomorrow, it's like it's a 2-day thing, is we dance with the Torah. There's like wild dancing going on because the Torah, the object, is the divine narrative. We will open the Torah completely in a full circle, so you can look at the innards of the Torah, and each of us will get a word from the scriptures, from Torah, to take home as a gift for the year. And we'll quickly just take a brief overview of what's happening in the story. The act of opening the Torah in a circle is I know some of you I see have done it, but many of us haven't. And it takes all of us in a circle to hold it together. We become a sacred circle. And then the last thing we'll do is we're going to whack the willows. So, right. So whacking the willows, and Ezra, who's here, went to Crown Heights this morning and probably paid way too much money for willows.
He's shaking his head.
So he'll tell us later. But this goes back to our primitive agrarian history, where at this time of the year in the Middle East is the beginning of the rainy season. Rain is life. It ain't going to rain, we're going to die. So this entire high holy season is about getting us to be ready to pray for rain, to be the rainmakers, because otherwise we will perish. And so part of the rituals was taking willows that represent humility, but they are a plant that needs water. And no one knows where this comes from. It's probably really ancient, indigenous, bizarre. You take a willow branch or a clump of a few willow branches, and you whack the out of it on either on the altar, which they did 2,000 years ago, or on the floor, on the carpet, so it doesn't get destroyed. And then you really pray for rain. And rain is both H2O coming from the heavens, but also the manifestation of anything. Rain in Hebrew is manifestation. Let it rain grace. We're going to ask, like, what do you want to? Let it rain peace. Let it rain dignity. Let it rain equality. Blah blah blah. So this is what they did back in the temple. We're doing a wacko uptown version of it. We're going to invite us all to be part of the circle, to open the Torah, to whack the willows, and to together as people open our hearts to rain in all its many manifestations.
That sounds phenomenal.
And Naomi's leading us in Etz Chaim. So the song that Naomi co-composed called "She is a Tree of Life," and it's a verse from scriptures, from the Tanakh, that talks about Torah, wisdom, but really talks about the divine in the feminine. Etz Chaim hila machazikim ba. Tradition, the divine, this ritual is a tree of life, a living tree for those of us who hold on to the tree. It isn't wood, it's a tree. So we thought that would be a great song with which to... Are we inviting people up on stage at this point? Okay. Before we do that.
Before we do that, and it's something that it'll be very, very quick. When I first conceived of Open Heart Conversations a few months ago, I put this paper together and I gave it to one person, Reverend Heather Shea, and she said yes. She just said, this is what we got to do. And I had a vision for it. And today that vision has become an absolutely living reality. Because this is exactly what Open Heart Conversation should be all about. And I want to first of all thank you for that. And I also want to thank my beloved spirit sister, Arda Itez, who conceived of all this. You know, this is it. This is what we're about. So
Amen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rabbi. This is magnificent.
Where is Reverend Heather? Where is Heather? Because we would love to thank her, especially because this is.
I see her.
Where is she? She is. We call her the angel of the palace.
She's coming with her angelic wings.
Come, please.
So Naomi, is the plan for inviting people on stage?
Yeah. Shall we move? Shall we
How are we
open up the curtains?
So as Heather comes up, we're gonna reveal the Torah.
Ladies and gentlemen, she is the spiritual director and CEO of the United Palace of Spiritual Arts, Reverend Heather Shea. So if we could say thank you to her.
Thank you, Heather. Lovely to be here. Thank you. So are we inviting people up?
Yeah. Is there anyone who needs help?
Okay. From where?
Please use the stairs.
Come, friends. Come. There's stairs on over here as well, friends. Come, everybody come, either side.
This was all your baby.
This is our baby.
Marcelo, bluegrass.
It's a much better looking baby if it's up.
Mark, bring it around.
What do you need? Tell me what you need. I'll help you. Okay. Take a tissue and pass the box along.
Take a tissue, pass the box.
Let's close the circle. Let's close the circle. Bring it around.
Do you need a tissue? You don't? Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't realize you were wearing that. I have no idea.
over here.
Yes.
That biblical proportions. But I'm going to assume that never on this stage, this is a wild assumption, we don't know the history of this magnificent place, that a Torah scroll has not been opened in a full circle. So this is a moment of what we like to call in our Jewish liturgy a shehecheyanu moment, of doing something for the first, but maybe not the last time. So I'm going to don myself in my spiritual superpower cloak for this one, my prayer shawl. And it's really great to see the circle. How many of you have done this before and opened a Torah in a circle? Okay, so about less than a third. So for many of us, it's the first time. So here are the instructions. Right behind us over here is a Torah scroll. And Alice and Charlotte, can you help me uncover this purple talit over here with both hands? Alice, can you go to the other hand over there and move this?
Gabbai Emily.
Thank you.
We have a Gabbai today, somebody, a
Great.
spiritual helper who's going to help us work the Torah with Rabbi Amichai.
So here's a Torah scroll dressed for the event with his Torah dress. This object over here is known as a yad, Hebrew for hand. It's a pointer. So when we read from the scroll, we use the pointer. This particular one was found in a construction site in the Upper West Side about 45 years ago. And the guy held on to it. And about a few months ago contacted us and said, you know, I got this thing. I found it. I think you guys should have it. So now we've been using this one. And what we're going to do in just a moment with Rabbi Emily is going to help us. We're going to take off the dress of the Torah, and we're going to very slowly open it. And for all of you with tissues, we prefer tissues so that we don't touch the scroll with our hand. This particular Torah scroll is about 100 years old, probably from Poland, according to the scribal style. Gods only know what it went through, but it made it at some point to North America and purchased for us about 8 years ago. So we're going to open it in a circle, and I think we have just about enough of us in this size circle. We might want to open it a little bit, we'll see, to just have a full circle from the creation of the world all the way to the death of Moses and everything that happens in between. So, all right? And again, if you've never done this, enjoy a lot. And if you've done this, welcome back. And Naomi's going to lead us together with our Levites into the prayer that says, let's open our hearts to the wisdom of mystery.
We are opening. We are opening. Try that. We are opening.
You can take this off. Okay.
We are opening.
So we're at the end.
We are opening.
Yeah.
We
So
are
hold.
opening.
And let's start right over here.
Opening. We are opening.
Congratulations. You're at the very end, meaning at the very beginning.
For opening up that ancient.
Either the bottom or top.
The words we have for opening
think
this
I could use
ancient
another
scroll.
thank you.
Tiftach libi, open my heart to wisdom.
There you go.
The
Right there.
oraita,
Great.
the same word for Torah. Capital
Right,
T or
it's both.
lowercase t for wisdom,
never
as
noticed
Rabbi
this
Amichai
before.
spoke about.
This is the name of
The
the
words are
scribe.
Tiftach libi be'oraita.
Never made it.
Tiftach libi be'oraita. Tiftach libi be'oraita. Tiftach. Tiftach. Tiftach.
You guys know right?
Tiftach libi. Come out in the center so they can follow you.
People who saw this.
Tiftach libi be'oraita.
Hello.
Tiftach libi be'oraita. Tiftach. Tiftach, 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 Libi. We are opening. We are opening. We are opening. We are
Bring it out. Have it.
opening. We are
Yeah, we need a little more here.
opening.
Move a little bit over this way.
Opening. We are
We're gonna have to open the circle more.
opening. We are opening. La 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 la. La 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 la.
It's all good.
La la la. 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 Ya la la ya la 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 la. Ya la 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 la. Ya 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 la la. We are opening. We are opening. We are opening. Lord, opening. There you go.
All right.
We are opening. Let's get harmony. We are opening. There you go. There you are. Beautiful. We are opening. Opening. We are
So Maven, take the spot on the
opening.
outside for just for now.
We are
And I'll call you in a bit.
lead.
You're chanting, right? So we're starting.
We are Tiftach Libi, Tiftach Libi, opening. We are opening. We are opening.
Can you open a little bit
We
more?
are
A little wider? A little wider?
opening. We are opening. Tiftach Libi, ya na 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 na. Na 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 na. Ya na na.
Perfect size, though.
Ya na na. Ya na na. Ya na na. Ya na na. Ay ay ay. Ya na 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 na. Ya na 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 na
We need
na.
a couple more
Ya
people
na na.
here. Someone can move.
Ya na na.
We want to stretch out a little.
Ya na na.
We'll go. He and I will go. Come, coming.
We are opening, opening.
Excellent, thank you.
We are opening.
Let's connect.
We are
Connect.
opening.
You got
We
the
are
very beginning.
opening. Keep going. We are opening.
Circle.
We are opening. We are opening. We are opening.
So Mavens, go take your spaces outside for a few minutes. Okay. So I invite you to take a look around. For those of you who know the 5 books of Moses from any format that you may have encountered it in a gift of the Gideons in a hotel near you, or the film version, or the book, this is what it looks like from the very beginning to the very end. So what we're going to do is Eliana is going to chant the last few lines in Hebrew from the very end of the scroll, and I'll translate it in the oral tradition. And then we're going to go right into the beginning of the book, because it's really not a book. It is a scroll. It's a circle. It's a spiral. It's never ending. And that gap in between, mind the gap. It's not really a gap. Also, I mean, Sarah knew this, but I haven't, that like The scribe's name is written on both ends, Isaac Reisman. So now we can figure out where the scroll came from, some research.
Wow.
So I invite us to tap into the end and into the beginning. Think of what it's like in our lives that don't always have milestones, to have a moment where the end meets the beginning and the beginning meets the end, and the death of one elder breathes into the beginning of the new reality, and the end of 1 year breathes into the next, and what it means for us to constantly emerge and evolve. ויעמוד.
ויעמוד שם משה עבד אדוני בארץ מואב על פי אדוני.
Yeah. So Moshe, dies. He's on the top of the mountain. He's overlooking the promised land that he will not enter. He is the servant of the Almighty, and he dies by the mouth of the eternal mystery. Some say with a kiss.
ויקבור אותו וגיא בארץ מואב מול בית פאור ולא ידע איש את קבורתו עד היום הזה.
And it was the eternal who buried Moses on the top of that mountain. We know exactly where it is, but we really don't, because nobody knows where Moses is buried. Because can you imagine what a headache of a pilgrimage site that would have been? So it's better this way.
ולא קם נביא עוד בישראל כמשה אשר ידעו אדוני פנים אל פנים.
There was none like Moses. For all the prophets, he was the only one who knew the eternal, who communicated with mystery face to face as one faces another.
לכל האותות והמופתים אשר שלחו אדוני לעשות בארץ מצרים לפרעה ולכל עבדיו ולכל ארצו.
Oh, the many great acts and wonders and miracles and acts of unbelievable courage that this man delivered as sent by the eternal mystery in just 120 years' life. That was Moses.
ולכל היד החזקה ולכל המורה הגדול אשר עשה משה לעיני כל ישראל.
His hand was strong, and he taught people how to have awe. And in the presence of the infinite mystery and in the eyes of all of Israel, he led from slavery to freedom. And on this moment, took his last breath, breathing it mouth to mouth into the divine. And that's how this book ends, by describing the death of its author. So I want to invite us all to, in just a second, take a deep breath in and hold it for as long as you can. Okay? Ready? Steady. Go.
בראשית ברא אלוהים את השמיים ואת הארץ.
So at the very beginning of everything, the Almighty creation, creator, mother and father of all, held their breath from the breath of Moses and then breathed it out. And in the beginning, there was heaven and there was earth, created with a word.
והארץ הייתה תוהו ובוהו וחושך על פני תהום ורוח אלוהים מרחפת על פני המים.
And all there was something called tohu and bohu. There was chaos and commotion. There was nothing formed. And the Spirit of the divine hovered over the face of the deep.
ויאמר אלוהים יהי אור ויהי אור.
So I invite you to close your eyes. And Creator then spoke and said, "Let there be light." And as you open your eyes, there was light. And photosynthesis started. And it's all been uphill ever since. In a good way. And sometimes bad. Keeps on happening. That's the beginning of the story. So this is our scroll, and what we're going to do for the next few minutes are two things. Number one, a really quick synopsis, in case you slept through your way through Sunday school and Hebrew school. Here's what's happening in these 5 books, with a theme of this year's theme for our Lab Shul community. It's on us. Where are the moments in the story that call for collective responsibility? That call for us being part of a larger we. So this is the part I don't plan. I'm winging this. So I'm going to find a few moments here, and we're going to go to the chorus of "It's on Us." And when we do that, the most fun part, we're going to invite each one of us to point wherever you are. Is a tarot reading, is a gift from beyond, and there's a word there waiting for you. There will be your word for the year. And our trained mavens are educated educators and artists will run around and be able to translate for you what this word means and what's the context as a blessing for the year. Okay? But first, let's see what we got.
To give you a moment to find your first place, we'll all chant together the word for "It's on Us" in Hebrew, Aleinu. So I'll chant it and you just respond to me, and we'll give Amichai a second to find his place.
Aleinu, 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 Aleinu. So the very first Aleinu moment is when the divine creator says, "Hey, let's go down and create humanity," and humanity is in the plural, meaning God is in the plural. So from the very beginning, it's not individual, it's always about we. Humanity, men, women, others, all are all one big plural mystery. That's a good one to start. Aleinu,
Aleinu, Aleinu, Aleinu.
And then we're going to go right into Canaan. And you know what happened there? It's on us to remember that moment and minimize violence. And I'm going to fast forward into Noah and the flood. And he was only one man with one family and every animal in the zoo, but like somebody has to take care of all of creation. So that's an Aleinu moment for sure. And then the flood is over and the first vineyard is planted. And 10 generations later, right after the Tower of Babel, if you want to hear the Tower of Babel this coming Saturday, we'll be doing this again, and we'll be telling the story of the Tower of Babel Saturday afternoon to JCC. But then Abraham happens, and Abraham leaves his hometown, and he travels with his wife and family to Canaan and then to Egypt. He creates the monotheistic tradition. He meets Hagar, the Egyptian princess, who becomes the surrogate mother. Maybe that's a good moment to fixing and healing that moment of family tensions with let's be one big family and take care of each other. And Aleinu.
Aleinu. Aleinu. Aleinu.
And then Abraham goes to save the people of Sodom, and he says to God, wait a minute, if there's just one holy, saintly person there, are you going to destroy the city? The city goes down anyway, but it's a moment of responsibility for the welfare of everybody. And we're only in Genesis. And then Ishmael is born, and Isaac is born, the next generation. Sarah dies, and Abraham dies, but not before Rebecca shows up together with a whole horde of camels, and she becomes the next matriarch. And then there is famine, and then Jacob and Esau are born, and the first Midrash is born. And then Isaac will die, but not before Jacob runs away from home to his mother's land, and where he has a big dream with angels everywhere. So that's Aleinu, but we'll skip that. And then there is the birth of the 12 tribes and the daughter Dinah, and then they have a lot of sheep, and they build an empire of cattle, and there are 4 mothers and all these children. And so again, a moment of honoring the family. They go back to Canaan. Jacob wrestles and becomes Israel, the one who wrestles with the divine. And then Dinah, their daughter, has this, oh, Dinah, there you are. Hi, Dinah. So your namesake once upon a time had a date with a local boy. It ended up badly, unclear, maybe too many beers, all of that. And anyway, there was a healing there eventually. So that's a moment of Aleinu responsibility for each other. And there is the Kabbalah of Dinah's birth. So we're remembering that. And then Joseph happens. Joseph gets sold by his own brothers into slavery. Not a great moment. So I think Aleinu is required to us to fix the moment when brothers minimize the holiness of their own brother. Let that not happen again. Can we have an Aleinu moment here? Aleinu.
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 Just twice.
Aleinu.
Shorter. Joseph moves to Egypt. He resolves the dreams of the Pharaoh. There's a famine that's about to destroy the country, but good thinking helps them all survive. We are now in Egypt, and there's dreams, and there's prison, and there's a way to get out of there, and there is the famine. The family reunites. It's a complicated story. Finally, Joseph meets Jacob, his father, and the entire family comes to Egypt. The book of Genesis ends with a of Joseph. We're beginning the book of Exodus, the book of names, and that's on us, because these are people who were guests and then become slaves. So this is slavery that we know about in our lifetime, but it starts here. And so from this moment, you got the Pharaoh, you got the Pharaoh's daughter that breaks the law in order to save the baby. You got the midwives that save the babies and break the law. You got Moses who shows up in the thingy bush, the burning one, and said, hey, I could take care of my own life, but I'm going to take care of other people. I'm going to go down to Egypt. And we could sing Go Down, but we won't. But that's a moment of saying I'm in the service of others. That happens here. I'm going to fast forward the 10 plagues. and I'm going to get us all the way to the Passover, and we're leaving Egypt, and the Song of the Sea that Miriam got. Perfect. And they sing, and at the end of the Song of the Sea, when they've crossed the sea, and the Israelites sing with glee because they survived, and the Egyptians drowned, according to Midrash, the legend, it is said, hey, you cannot laugh and sing with joy while your enemy is dying, because we are all children of humanity. Sing for liberation, but do not be glad when your enemy drowns. And so that's the moment of it's on us to be humanity. Okay, then the Ten Commandments happen. Really, human laws: don't kill, don't steal, be human. And then we got a lot more laws happening. The golden calf is happening. Skip that. We've got the building of the tabernacle, the first united palace in history, the best fundraising campaign in world history. Everybody was part of the building. Everybody bought something into it. That's an Aleinu moment. Build the sacred together. We go into Leviticus, the book of how to activate the temple, actually, how to offer animals and music, how to come together as a community, to eat together, to celebrate the sacred. Leviticus is starting right here, and now we've got chapter after chapter of recipes for the sacred. It takes a village to make the sacred, to grow the cows, offer the goats, the priests, the Levites. There's that moment when two priests go up in smoke because they didn't quite have their timing right or something. But this is really about how community builds the sacred and then takes care of the leper and takes care of people who've given birth and women who've given birth and taking care of people who have any kind of illness, a structure for healing and for fixing and for coming back home. And then it says over here, you shall be sacred, kedoshim tihiyu. We are a nation of all of us sacred. So let's give an Aleinu for that, for what it means to be holy. We have the responsibility for the sacred. The Jewish calendar shows up here, how to create holy space and holy time. There are more rules about how to have social and financial equality, how to take care of the trees, how to take care of the earth, how to have the sabbatical every 7 years so that the earth rests. That's on us. We are the custodians of the earth. We get to the fourth book, the book of Numbers, the book of the wilderness. It begins with a census. It counts how many people there are. First time we're counting. I forget the numbers. I'm not good with the Excel, but there's a lot of people here, and every single soul counts. So that is another moment of let's everybody count.
Aleinu.
Aleinu. This is the beginning of the numbers. Everybody matters. And then there is the priestly blessing that we might sing at the end of today. That's what you got, folks, right here. The 3 lines of the oldest prayer we've got. And then we've got the dedication of the tabernacle with like every gift and every flag and the big ritual, artistry and spiritual right there. And then we've got the people who wanted meat. And there was the big meat protest. Didn't end up well. They had to deal with manna. And then Miriam dies, our prophet. And then the spy goes down to Canaan to try and tell us what's happening in the promised land. And they come back, and there's a bit of a debate whether we should or we should not move forwards, go backwards. But the people decide we're going to move forward, and they do. That's an Aleinu moment, deciding to let majority rule. And then you've got the rest of the book of Numbers. You got the red heifer and the beginning of the strange recipes for how to make holy life out of death. And then we move into Balaam the prophet, who was hired to curse but instead blesses and says, how beautiful are your tents, Israel, and heathens and Hebrews, get along. That's an Aleinu moment. And then we've got the first feminist moment where the 5 daughters of Tzlofchad are not supposed to inherit because they're women, but they're like, wait a minute, aren't we supposed to be feminists? So they create a new law where women inherit along with men. That's an early moment of Aleinu. It's on us for equality.
Women's
That's
rights are
right
human
there.
rights.
Women's rights are human rights. Started right here. And then you've got the tribes that want to stay in Transjordan and not cross over. So instead of being one country, you got many countries, all considered holy. And then you've got the end of the book of Numbers and into the book of Deuteronomy, where we repeat all these 4 books with a bit of a twist. So we've got Moses' last words and his poetic prophecy. You've got the remembrance of many wars and how to focus on peace. You've got laws about how to worship and who not to worship. You've got the cities of refuge, where in case you did something wrong, sorry, you got a place to go where nobody will punish you. You got the 10 Commandments being repeated in the one Jewish mantra that says Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad, all is one. That's an Aleinu moment. Remember that. All is one.
Aleinu.
We have more of the big Mosaic speech and the remembering of what to do and how to live life and how to love each other, how to be suspicious of false prophets and people whose divine messages are not positive, what to eat and what not to eat. That's where the whole cheeseburger thing came from. And then, hey, today, Chag HaSukkot Aselecha, 7 days celebrated in holy huts. Today is the 8th. And then judges and rules and justice. You got to have good judges and good justices who are not inspired by anything but the love of justice. And you've got, more about that. And then you've got more laws about how to build homes that are safe and how to wear clothing that are beautifully done and with care of its workers, and laws about weddings, and laws about what happens when people die, and laws about entering the land and remembering the laws with justice, and more of the teachings and the blessings and the curses, and the last thing that Moses really wants to come home but he can't, so it's something about knowing your limitations and you can't always get what you want, and the last song of Ha'azinu, and let the earth and the sky be witnesses, and then we get to where we started, the last breath of Moses. Well, that was one way of telling the Torah. Aleinu, 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 Aleinu. It's on us as we're holding up this scroll. We're almost done. What we're going to do right now is invite you into the Torah Tarot. Torah Tarot by Reb Zalman Schechter Shalomi, a great elder who passed to the next plane several years ago, who got us to open the Torah scroll. This is his teaching. And then all of you standing here and holding Torah, wherever you are, is auspicious. And we're inviting you to take your finger, like you're holding this pointer, and point at the text. And find, with a tissue would be even better, and find your spot, and then Eliana and Naomi and Daphna, Sheridan, Steve, Emily, anyone else who's here, you're feeling very proficient with knowing Hebrew and Hebrew context? Okay, to be Maven? Okay, that's a good core group. We are going to come together in the middle. We are the Mavens, the reality makers. Emily, come. And we get to spin around like dreidels. And wherever you're pointing, we're going to come to you and we're going to say, oh, you got that word in that context? Here's what it means for you for the year. And it's all blessings. It's all good. Cannot be any other way. Might be mysterious, but a blessing. And if you feel you're stuck and you don't get it, you need some help, call on me. We'll make it happen. I've done this a lot. So Sheridan, come to the middle. We all get to dreidel ourselves.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Okay, ready?
Choose which book we want?
You get to go whichever the Spirit calls you. Ready? Let's spin around 3 times. 1, 2, 3, and go. All right, let's go. Hello. What's your name? Hi, Lynn.
Hey.
Nice to meet you. Awesome. So,
I
Lynn,
just got
you've
dizzy.
got...
Hold on.
Okay, you got
hold
sacrificial
on.
stuff. ואת השני יעשה עולה כמשפט. The second sheep is second.
To differentiate. Like
Yes, the
there's
second
service
bird
of
will be
Shabbat that
offered,
says
and it will
differentiating between
be
the sacred
all
and
will be
mundane,
offered
whatever.
as it
So,
should be. So
again,
your word is
this
ola,
this is
rising.
sacred.
Ola,
Blessing,
rising.
like you
Something is
distinguish
rising
and
as it should be.
together.
Maybe a sacrifice, an offering.
Completely,
Something's
like,
rising as it should be.
Gorgeous, like
Congratulations.
different
Ola.
places and traditions.
Like-
lead
like ole.
you in that path.
Wait, let me.
Havdil.
Love that. Thank you.
Hayom, today.
Okay.
Yeah, on this day,
you're
again, this is
between lines.
sacrificial
Which one do you
rights,
want?
but this
Okay,
is
so
about
that
wherever you
is,
are today. Hayom, this day,
I
you're
mean,
coming
the word
here.
is Shana,
Take today.
which means year.
Every day is Hayom, this
So
day,
that's interesting. I mean,
day by day.
first of all, I want to know what you read on
Hi.
that.
Hi, Jen.
To me,
Amichai.
just having got to know you from just a second,
Right there.
like how you are
V'tihel,
planning and
purified.
creating and thinking.
This is about the
like,
moment
I
when
imagine you are like
a
7 years
priest
out
takes care of a
already,
leper
and what does
and
it mean?
heals the leper. And when it is done, the priest and the leper wash their clothes and are purified. So you got the word purified. After a process, purity.
It's very fitting, actually.
Amen. Congratulations. Purity year long. This is about a hold on, I'm taking this one. This is about a human being, a man who has some physical, medical issues and is healed. And this is the day when he comes to see the priest, and the priest atones him. And whatever came out of his body and his soul is dried up. So the word mizuvo is like the emissions have stopped. So it's about healing in some way. Healing, mizuvo. Rabbeinu. Okay, shatnez, you got shatnez. Okay, let's make something out of that. Uveged kleim shatnez lo yale alecha. So your hand was on the alecha. So maybe you got to figure out what in your life is and is not shatnez, not fabric, but like, you know, what's the wrong kind of hybrid and what's the right kind of hybrid? But it's alecha. In the aleinu, something alecha. That's lacha. Hello, brother. Have you been? Okay, so this section is good? All right. Yes. Yes.
Okay, you told us about numbers and the priestly blessing
Yeah.
and the oldest prayer.
Yes.
Where would I be able to find, right here, where would I be able to find this in the book of Numbers?
In which chapter? I don't remember. I can look. But if you just Google the priestly blessing, Book of Numbers, it'll pop up.
Oh, really?
May God bless you and defend you. Yeah.
You said something about oldest prayer and gifts and flags.
This is it. Well, this is all about flags and gifts, but right over here, this is the priestly blessing. I can find it for you later.
Okay.
Easily. It's a beautiful prayer, and we'll sing it in a bit.
Okay.
Awesome.
Foot is the hat, right?
No, the foot is the
Oh, is
is the
the
chest.
okay.
Yes. What section needs? Okay. So you coming too?
I was
She's going this way? Have you gone? Okay. This word, v'yeladeha, and her children. This is the law of if someone is married to a woman and they're both in enslavement and they want to go free. So both the man and the woman and her children can go free. So it's about something about freedom and something about children. V'yeladeha, and her children. It's about and her children. So I want to know where that meets you, but Amen. Happy to tell you more later. Hi Alexis. Legulgolet. Okay, so this is the daily bread that they had, and everybody got exactly as much bread as per skull, literally, per head. So your hand was on legulgolet. So everybody got the exact same food as they needed to per skull, per head. So it's something about what's just right, just like exactly what you need, per measure, per head. Nourishment, safety, trust. It'll be just enough, just right. What'd you get? Ah, you're in the poem. Where are you? This word? Okay.
It's always the same. I always get the worst one.
No. I'm going to reinterpret this for you. ומבחר שלישיו טובעו בים סוף. The best of Pharaoh's courtiers drowned in the sea. So the word tav'u is drowned. But if we change the spelling, it's tiv'o, nature. Tav'o. So it's about something needs to drown, something from the past needs to drown for the best to rise. So something needs to drown. Those old soldiers, sorry guys, but they gotta go. Hi.
Hi.
Hello. I'm Amichai. Remember we met in Rabbi Amichai. Jessica. Hi.
Yeah.
Welcome back. What you got? Where are we? So God says to Moses, tomorrow morning this is it. Tomorrow morning we're out of here. And I'm going to send the scare into the hearts and they will know. And you will know. So your finger was on the word teda. So you will know. But this is like the knowing of knowing. That like freedom is going to happen and you cannot keep on doing this oppression business. So teda, you will know. Something in you is ready to know some deep truths about freedom within and beyond. Congratulations. Exodus, you're it. This is the moment. Hi, did you get?
No, not yet.
Hi, and you are?
Rebecca.
Hi, Rebecca.
So they were like, they wanted to go out for traverse.
Right there? Okay. So you got Mitzrayim. This is God saying to Moses and Aaron, hold up your hands and the frogs will rise all over the land of Egypt. So your hand was on the word Egypt, Mitzrayim. But the word Mitzrayim means the narrow places. That's what it means. So so think of where is it narrow and where is it going to open. And something with frogs. There's some frogs leaping in the thing. Maybe there's like a handsome frog prince in the wings. I don't know. But it's about Egypt as a metaphor of opening the narrow into the wide. And frogs. Did you get? I did. You guys all set? Hey guys, you got? Did you get a word? Okay, point a word anywhere. Just point your finger anywhere. Somewhere here.
It's a woman. Yeah. Okay. Tomorrow with.
Okay, you got it. You got the word chesed. Chesed means kindness.
We're dealing with here.
And the text you got is, so I'll tell you later, but this is the dream of the king of Egypt, the Pharaoh. He has a crazy dream, and he's like, I don't know what this dream means. So then Joseph says to me, oh, I'll tell you what the dream is about. And then it's about, if you remember, how to be kind. You are very kind. Anyone else? Do we get? Hi. Did you get? What'd you get? Year. Year. The year. The beginning of the calendar. Yes. Seasons. The beginning of seasons. Okay. I think we all went. We all went? Let them finish. Yai. Yai na na na. Yai na. Wait. Yai na na na. Are you the last ones?
I need that.
Amazing.
Got Tamar for her work.
Well, yeah, Dina before. Was it? Okay. So I invite us to hold the circle. We're going to unwind the scroll in just a moment. I hope you all got a word or a tarot take of meaning. If you have any questions about what your tarot means to you, I did not do one.
Did you do one?
Oh, Mavens. Okay, true. Thank you. Mavens, real quick.
Okay, I'm right behind the camera. I'm going over here. I'm going right over here. Okay.
Are you interpreting for yourself?
Okay.
I am.
Okay. How about Nicole?
Veikach. Okay, this is Jacob crossing over to become Israel.
I love that.
Veikach.
Yes.
Okay, this is a good one.
Yes.
Veikach. I got
All of
one.
it. Okay. Do
Okay.
you want to do one? Okay.
What you got?
I'm just like right here.
Okay.
Purity.
Beyom taharato. That's great. Okay.
But we're going to retranslate
Right
it to
here.
that I take from
Yes.
all the nations, not I'm better than all.
No.
Did you do
Okay.
one? Steve, did you do one?
Stand right in the middle, my friend. Give us a.
Kol ha'amim.
Amen. So as we wrap this up, and I hope we walk away from today having unscrolled wisdom and finding something to guide our year with more wisdom and integrity and humility, we're going to do one more thing, and that is the wacky, willow whacking part. Before we whack the willows, and I think we don't have a lot of kids here. We only have a few. So I think, so we're all kids. Yeah. So what I think we're going to do is we are going to sing the priestly blessing together. Our friends over there, you're holding the priestly blessing, and I'm going to invite us all to be each other's priests, each other's holders of the sacred. And with that, after that, we're going to scroll the Torah back. It will take a couple of minutes, and then we're going to come back together in the circle, imagining the scroll around us, and we're going to do this willow whacking thing. And with that, we'll end. So I know you can't hold on to each other because you're holding on to the scroll, but let's hold each other with our eyes. Let's create a magnetic field here. May the divine source protect, defend, be with each one of us.
Ya'er Adonai panav elecha v'chuneka.
May light emanate from within and from beyond. May we each be initiated into the great and subtle mysteries of life. Face to face, each one of our faces is in the divine image. Let us look face to face in each other's eyes today, on every day, seeing the divine in every single face, and there, here, be peace.
Say together, Shalom.
Shalom, shalom. Shalom, shalom, shalom. Shalom, shalom, shalom. Shalom, shalom, shalom.
Shalom.
So now, my friends, let us scroll. We're going to do it from two. So I'm going to start this way,
In front of you.
from the beginning to the middle. And Emily, Ezra, you can go the other way. We're going to sing the song to the Holy Tree of Life. And in just a moment or two, we're going to regroup to whack those willows. Emily? This is the moment you've been waiting for. Okay. Willows. We're going to whack them. Now, I don't know if there are enough willows per person, so we might want to do this in twos. And again, we're taking a Canaanite ancient custom that the Jews made their own some 2,000 years ago, and still today in many synagogues, people really get their anger management out of the way, whacking the bead thing out of these things. So what we're going to do is we're going to come up with some kind of a rain chant. Do we know which of the Hoshanas we're doing? Or some kind of a really great rain chant?
I have a call and response for you. It says, well, do you want to be my maven, Amichai?
Sure.
Shafte mayim v'sason.
Shavte, mayim besason.
Bring out water with joy
Mi ma'aneh hayeshua.
from the springs of redemption. Let's bring the waters from. So I invite you to come closer. Come on closer. Come on into the circle. I mean, this has probably never happened on the stage. Right? Good chance, Heather. And you get to, let's see if you get one each. Hopefully one each. Okay. No, not yet. Don't whack it yet. Put intention into it. Charlotte, you want to willow? Okay. So, you got one?
This is getting out your aggression
wow,
right here.
This is super fun. Shh, just a second. So let me explain, my friends. Imagine that in the middle of this clearing, in our circle, we have an altar. And on that altar, we sacrifice all of our angst, and all of our regrets, and all of our frustrations, and all of our gratitude, and all of our history. And there's a vector that's opening between this altar and the sky. And then we go around in a circle. And as we go around in a circle, we take this willow that represents all of our hopes for a year of abundance, for a reign of grace, for a reign of responsibility, for a reign of the best turnout this election season this country has ever seen. Reign of, yes, I'm not going to be partisan, but you can. I want to invite you, what do you want? What kind of a rain do you want this season, this year?
Abundance.
Abundance.
Life.
Throw it out there.
Compassion.
Love.
What'd you say?
Yes.
Strength.
Good rhythm.
Romance.
Amen. Yes. Good celebration.
Creativity.
So with that, Marcelo and team are going to give us some good beat, some kind of a beat. I'll trust you. Give us something that we're going to walk in a circle. And as we walk in a circle, we're going to whack this willow. Because we are the rain clouds. And you whack it on the floor. Go. Like this. Let it rain Brent comes.
Hoshana, 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 Hoshana. Whack the willow, the willow. Hoshana, Hoshana.
All right.
Hoshana.
Well, it's working. They're just not getting whacked. Naomi, stop. Stop. Woo! So, when I was growing up, when you whacked the willows, there was actually no leaves left on the branch. These are special sturdy willows. So I guess that
Charlotte's
means
the closest.
you got a bunch of them down. Nice job. But like, you know what? I invite you to take these with you and
smells so
either keep whacking it or put it on your desk or on your altar or maybe in a little glass of water. And may our intentions from this circle help us bring down the rains of blessing and the rains of love and the rains of nobody going hungry and the rains of nobody going thirsty for love and meaning and the rains of good sleep and the rains of good health and the rains of good government and the rains of justice for all and dignity for everybody and the rains of transparency.
It is.
Amen. And generosity and hospitality such as the one we've experienced today by our beautiful friends. Thank you, Heather. Thank you, Jose. And thank you, Arda. And thank you, our entire beautiful team who's looking at us and saying, how are we going to clean up this mess? Well, together, thank you. Thank you all for joining us. Such a treat to end the high holiday season in this United Palace of Love with new friends and with strange customs and new beliefs. I think as far as we're concerned, we're done. But maybe Heather or Arda, Jose have a word or two before we wrap out of here.
Yes,
Pretty much
I want.
on time.
Is this? Am I live here? Okay, friends, Rabbi Amichai, Naomi, all of you. Thank you so much for coming into our house and sharing your magnificent tradition with us. I cannot tell you how much it means to Reverend Jose, to myself, especially to Reverend Heather. Thank you, and we hope to see you here celebrating with us again. Thank you.
Amen.
We can't wait.
So we'll
Good
end
year,
with a
good
blessing
winter.
of peace. Shalom aleichem, salam aleikum. Peace be upon you as we leave.
Amen.
Shalom aleichem. Aleichem shalom. Shalom aleichem. Aleichem shalom.
I loved it the whole
Oh, so wonderful to see you.
Yeah.